Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the Tuesday telecast from the Joyful Path. Here we are. Today, we're going to talk to someone who has an uncanny ability to do something she calls naming and taming the elephant in the room. And you ever have those situations where you don't know what's not working? It's something doesn't feel right? Or do you sink into your body and notice that things aren't feeling right? Let's go get Dr. Janice Campbell and bring her into the house to find out. Hello, Janice, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Lydia. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. We each are founders or founding members of the Octopus movement, and that is where I met you. How long have you been with the Octopus movement?
Somebody asked me that the other day. I think it's been 2+ years. It was sort of a vague sliding in to the octopus movement, and I don't remember exactly I mean, I know how I got connected with Perry. But I don't remember, like when I first started engaging, when I decided to be a founding member, all that kind of is just a blur. But I think it's around 2 years, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, so possibly twice as long as I've been. I've been in for a little over a year. And similar, slid in.
Right. Well,
with both feet though.
yeah, or all eight, as the case may be.
Yes. with with everything, with all of my hearts. So, um, you have this wonderful thing with your you help people identify basically what's blocking them, and I want to hear about that, but I want to hear about how you got yourself unblocked. What was in your past that you have risen from?
That's interesting. Well, I like puzzles. And
Mm,
so I sort of everything, and not to say that I don't run up against a wall and get pissed off about it every once in a while and then have to remember that it's a wall and I can walk around it. But I I've always been wanting to figure it out
mm,
and figure out um the pattern or the path. The way I
mm,
like to describe it, when I've been in administrative positions, I've said, you do such beautiful color-coded charts and such amazing flow dynamics, and I'm like, that's great. And I really am not interested in the marble run. The only reason I build the marble run is so I can put the marble at the top, go away, and come back at the end of the day and pick up the marble at the bottom. Meanwhile, been out and gotten some sunshine. I've read a book, I've played music, I've done something, right? And for me, it's more about allowing the marble to move as smoothly and as interestingly as possible. And if I need to go in and sand a edge or whatever, then so be it. Um, so I mean, luckily I was raised in a house that was very curious.
mm.
If you didn't know what a word meant or you didn't know what a concept was, my mother would always say, "Seize upon the moment of excited curiosity and look it up." Um, which was actually quoting her mother, who passed away before I was born. But Um, so there's always been sort of a fascination with things. Like my father read like 1600 dated encyclopedias, for fun before going to bed. And so, and also too, I think it was a cousin of mine that said, um, it didn't matter, what you did for a living or what you looked like or who you were. The important thing at our house was whether or not you could keep up at the dinner table. So I just I sort of grew up flying off on tangents and following other people's tangents and punning and and all the like back and forth about that. So in approaching anything that stymied me, there was always like I just haven't figured out the way around it. And so
Mm.
um I mean, the first thing that I think about is when I was in undergrad, I ended up writing my own degree in the selected studies program in the School of Visual Performing Arts at Syracuse. And I was combining editorial design and theater design and technology because I thought I was going to be a scenic designer, and I was irritated that any image you got, any poster you saw before a show, you'd walk in and the entire look of it would be different. And it just kind of made me bonkers. And so I was going to design all the promotional material and the sets so everything, fed into the same story. By the time I graduated, I decided I wanted to be a scenic artist, and then I got sort of kidnapped into stage management, which is its own story in itself, and did that for 15 years. Um, but that was sort of the first, like, okay, this bothers me. I need to figure my way around it. And then I um, quit stage managing after my father passed away, and we'd looked after him for years. I quit stage managing, and I came back to it and realized that there were a lot of things that I just didn't care about handling for other people anymore, which as a stage manager is not a great thing to do because you're in charge of handling everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I quit and worked for a television production company for a year and spent a while trying to figure that out. And so I guess the answer to your question, and then from there I went on to other things, but I guess the answer to your question is curiosity. The way I get around things that stymie me are, how do I do this differently? Like, I got a little freaked out about getting married until we wrote our wedding vows, which are the only thing we agreed to, and it's worked for 34 years, is a relationship based on choice rather than habit, and and wait, sorry, a relationship based on love, trust, and respect, and one that is by choice rather than habit. It then I was fine because that was the deal, and there weren't any other like sudden box edges I was going to have to deal with. Um, so as long as my curiosity can figure out a way to create a story big enough to live in, then I can make it work.
Mhm. Yeah. What I hear from that is setting it up right the first time, but taking the time to do that, and seeing what hasn't worked from the last one, and seeing what is in the future that might not work, and setting it up well, whatever it is. But there's something I'm curious about, and that's that your extremely vibrant dinner table growing up had the expectation that you had to keep up.
It was more like a challenge. It was not
Sure.
a. It was more like a game than it was a. We were nobody was being graded on anything. It was more of a, you know, if conversational topics were butterflies, there was like a swarm of them flying around the room. And
Yeah.
so it was like, can you, how many can I be involved in at the same time? Can I be having this chat with my mom, and then my brother's across the table saying this, and my dad is telling this other story to the entire table? And how do we keep, it was more that kind of thing, which actually ended up serving me really well when I was stage managing, because during tech rehearsals, I would have, as 5 to 8 people in my ear.
Yeah.
I'd have a bunch of them in my ear on headset, and then I'd have like 3 to 5 live people all talking to me at the same time.
Yes.
And it took me a long time after I quit stage managing. It took me probably at least 5 or more years to not be sitting in a restaurant and being able to tell you what all like 6 other tables are talking about.
Right.
Now I don't do that anymore, but for the
Right.
longest time I would automatically start processing all the conversations at the same time.
Yes. I relate to that a lot in my own path. Heard a lot of I heard much music at the same time. There was the music in my head, there was the music I was whistling or singing, there was the usually three pieces at once, and it took me a long time to stop that. And in a way, why would we want to stop that? It seems like something that's exemplary, but it wasn't, because I wanted to listen, and I wanted to deeply listen to what or to whom I was listening to. So what brought you to want to get rid of the separate conversations and hone in on whatever was
Hmm.
your
Well,
choice?
well, partly it was because I would appear distracted to people
Mm,
that were actually at my table talking to
mm,
me. When in fact I wasn't. They weren't the only thing I was listening to, and so part of it was to being wanting to show care to the people that I was actually out to dinner with, not strangers 3 tables away.
mm,
Um, and also because I quit stage managing and went to acupuncture school because I wanted my life to stop being or not my life, because I loved a lot of my work that I did in theater. And I miss some of it still.
mm,
However, I wanted my way of being in the world to stop being chaotic. And
mm,
so the only way for that to happen was for me to slow down. And it's not to say that I couldn't have slowed me down in that job. However, it would have been much harder because I had 15 years worth of or stop, 60 to 80 hours a week, 6 days a week, or nothing and recovering and doing laundry and looking for the next gig. So um it was more about wanting me to be different in the world and wanting to move differently in the world. um I think is why I slowed down. And the interesting thing is because people are, you know I come from a family of storytellers and talkers, and except for my brother Jay, who is amazingly quiet. I think he was just somebody had to listen. But the I think people hear me telling stories or having animated conversations, or think they ask me what I'm doing, and I've got 16 things going on at the same time. And the work that I do, whether it's in the treatment room or online with my distance mind body integration patients, or even just as a friend, um, the majority of that is actually listening. And I think that comes back. I know you and I've talked. That comes back from also thinking musically my whole life. It's all about sound. Like when somebody's telling me something important, I often don't look at them, because it's if I look at them, I'm getting too much information through my eyes and I'm not hearing as well.
mm.
I often will look down while somebody's telling me something important so that I can actually get deeply hear what they're saying.
Got it. Interesting. So your your way of coming to what you needed was to find how you could experience care, how you could care for yourself, how you could care for others. And that required you focusing the noise, focusing the different parts of your life that were, as you said, chaotic. Um, how was your relationship with care and as opposed to fun and chaos when you were growing up?
Um, I was an only child in a big family. I'm the youngest of six, and my closest sibling is 12 years older than me, and my oldest sibling is 21 years older than me. So, um, I started first grade, and my closest sibling went to college, and so it was my parents and my grandmother and our two cats. And I used to laugh and say that I was the only person in the house that didn't have gray hair, and including the cats. And um, so a lot of my time was with myself. And so I mean, I had friends and we had people over, and I was not a lonely kid, but I had a lot of time to myself.
Mm.
And and I think my beyond knowing that I need time to myself, and knowing I need time to do some of the things that I find meditative, whether it's playing piano or playing mandolin or swimming or being in nature or playing pool or drawing or whatever it is. um I've given, or reading for that matter, I went through a period in my early adulthood where I discounted those things and set those things aside for um but for the sake of a job or for the sake of doing things for other people, or being what they needed me to be. And then beginning in my 30s, and particularly starting acupuncture school, where you had to learn to walk your talk. Nobody graduated from the program that I was in, the same person that started. And so realizing that I'm not a good conduit for the medicine if I'm not looking after me. And I'm not that they're following me around, but my patients and my clients inevitably don't get as much out of their sessions with me, or don't don't do the homework that I give them if I'm not doing my homework. And it's not that they know, but they know. And it's reflected in how the ripple comes out from me. And um, so I think as a little kid, I was great at it. And then I kind of set it aside for the sake of being a grown up. And then I gave up being a grown up, and now I'm fine. And so, I mean, not that I still, there's still some things that I have to set myself up to do, that I enjoy. But it's particularly in the last 2 years when I've completely worked for myself. Um, I haven't said anything or done anything or talked to anybody that I didn't want to. And it'll be 2 years in March 10th. So
Well, so I have a kind of a question that is more general.
okay.
What do you think is the reason that we get to that place as humans, that we let go of what we enjoy even when we're supported, and that we put ahead things that make us money?
Mm. Well, I mean, part of it is because we're, at least in Western culture, in a space that says there's no such thing as enough. Um, Part of it also is, um, we at least I adhere to the belief that we start off as completely connected to the oneness, and then we separate from it, and then as we grow, we get further away from it, and so we're feeling more alone or more detached. And then as we get older, we get closer to death, we reattach, and then it all starts making sense again. It's I think part of it is being human, but I think also a large part of it is just what is enough. What is, um and each time we or each time many of us, there are people that have figured this out, and each time we hit a mark of what we've said was enough, suddenly the enough bar moves. And then we're like, oh yeah, okay, so the house is paid off, and now we don't have enough because we want this next thing to happen. And so, um I think, and we forget when enough was, we just want to be able to afford a house. or whatever it is. I mean, even less than that for starting off, it was even less than that. We just want to get a job when it was less than that. And then,
Yeah.
the bar keeps moving rather than letting us arrive and say, okay, this is good. This is good right here, you know.
Right. Letting us arrive, or also letting us enjoy the journey,
Yeah,
because we're not arriving to something that isn't there.
correct. Right.
So I'm going to move along here, as there's something that is um, that I'm deeply curious about, and that is how you will describe the elephant in the room to people watching.
Well, it depends on the situation. I mean, I landed on my tagline, naming and taming the elephants in the room. One, because I've always really loved elephants, but also because
Right.
because, and also because it's a thing I do regardless of what scenario I am or what job I'm doing. Um, it's I mean, one of the a really good example was when I was supervising in clinic for the master's and doctoral level students, and there was a patient who had come in, and the two students, the primary and secondary practitioner, had come out to talk to me about it, and they had all the signs and symptoms of this person being really angry, and it being where it was trapped in their body and all these other things. And they even had the sound of her voice and the energetic color that was coming up on her face and what she smelled like and all the things
Mm.
that would be used to diagnose it. And um, I went in to meet the patient and listen to her pulses and do my own little quick assessment before talking treatment planning with them. And I walked in, and she had been um, what they had figured out she was mad about was that her um she was mad at her husband, and she was headed towards divorce. And I walked in and I listened to her pulses, and I took a look at her, and I saw everything that they saw. And I have no way to really describe it other than I just knew. And I looked at her and I said, "Oh, you're not angry, you're heartbroken." And the room shifted, and she immediately came up as her true self and was like, "Oh my God, yes." And it was her anger was acting as a watchdog for the more tender emotion that was underneath it. Now, sometimes anger is just anger, but sometimes it acts like a watchdog. And other emotions, like I have a friend who his watchdog is joy. He will look absolutely joyful when he's frightened. His
Mhm.
watchdog is joy, but lots of times for a lot of people, anger is the watchdog. So in a treatment setting, it's something like that, is that I will just suddenly know that this is the thing, whatever it is. And it's more that it's not even so much as that I know as that I am open to having it. I'm open to to seeing it or having it shown to me. Um, so sometimes it's that, or
Mm.
sometimes it's work, from my stage management days, working on a scene, that is, it's, it's, everybody's doing a great job in their performances. People are off book. They know all their lines. The blocking looks good. We've figured out lighting. Why is this not working? And being able to sort of, for lack of a better word, I feel into it, but it's not even feeling so much as it is just opening myself up to taste the situation, and
Mhm.
and and be like, it's not working because of the relationship of where the two actors are on stage. The blocking makes perfect sense of why they should be in those places on stage, but they need to be on the same level, or they need to be, not on the same level. And so it's it's the thing that nobody's, I mean, everybody knows what the elephant in the room is. It's the thing that nobody's talking about. But it's also the thing that is underneath all the other stuff that is, if we talk about that thing, if we talk about the thing that's underneath everything, all the other stuff just kind of falls off. You know, like it's like everybody's sitting on top of the elephant and the elephant stands up and everybody slides off and suddenly it's like, oh, there's the elephant. Okay, so then how do we look at this elephant and say and tame it because it's there for a reason. It's there to draw our attention for a reason. And in the case of human interaction, in case of that patient, it was she didn't want the divorce to happen. And I said, have you said that? Have you said that you're heartbroken? And it had not even occurred to her that she was heartbroken. And so she wasn't even allowing herself to feel it. And so that, that created a movement, that created a shift that solved the puzzle. That then, and so it's kind of a rambling conversation, but it's how it's being willing to look at the entire picture, not just the piece of the picture you're asking me to pay attention to, but to be like, oh, that's there, but look at all this other stuff. And how does it, I don't know. I'm not sure that answered your question, but there you
It
go.
absolutely did. That was exactly what we needed to hear. And I'm going to sort of hone it a little further and say, not everybody can do this, right? This is why it's something special that you can do. Special because it's very, very useful.
Mm.
And so how do you, in the case of, say, stage managing, when you have
Mhm.
all of you, not just one blinder, like in the case of the patient, but you have all these different voices and all these different needs and all of these different energies, how do you focus on the one energy that's out of place? How do you
Me,
close it?
me, how do I do it?
How do you do
Um,
it? Yeah.
well, when I have my, for lack of a better word, my practitioner hat on, um, I could be having a horrible day. I, and for a variety of whatever reasons. But the moment that I put my practitioner hat on, all of that is not part of the conversation. It all just disappears behind me. And I become receptive to the story that's playing out for the person in front of me. Um, and and I may not even agree with the choices they're making or what they want to do, but I know what they have told me or they have shown me in some way what they want or what makes them, what's missing, what's showing up missing for them. And so again, it's somebody else's puzzle. I'm helping somebody else find that piece. Now, when it comes to me, and my stuff, well, I'm told by the people that live with me that I do have a couple of blind spots that they have to point things out to me, and I'm like, really? Really? That's happening? Oh, interesting. I had no idea. Um, which, of course. Um, as long as I've had sleep, I've eaten something, I'm well hydrated. I am, being nice to myself. Um, it always becomes a puzzle. It always becomes and it always becomes moving things through me. How do I keep, if something is stuck, how do I move through? A good example, which is way before any professional work. I was in high school, or actually I was in college. I'd just come back from my freshman year of college and I was designing sets for a theater that I had grown up in, a community theater that I'd grown up in. And the director, who had been, who had known me as a kid, had now hired me to be the set designer. And he had been really good about like treating me like an equal up until a certain point. And then he calls me one day out of the blue. We're getting really close to tech rehearsals and performance. And he calls me and says, "Oh, we don't have the money for the casters for the show. I'm cutting them." And that changed like the entire design of the set was based on the fact that we could move things around and make different, you can design a one set show, but I had not designed a one set show, and it was
Yeah,
completely
it's
dependent on
huge.
cast.
I
Yeah,
get
completely
that.
dependent on cast. And I was livid, and he like hung up with me, and I was sitting in my parents' kitchen and I was fuming. And my father came through, and he was my biggest cheerleader, and I was raised female in the South, so let's just start with that. And so he walks into the kitchen, and clearly I am pissed off because everything I feel shows up on my face unless I'm going deadpan. And he's like, "What are you so upset about?" And so I told him, and he said, well, he kind of got after me for being angry. And I said, "No, I'm entitled to this." And he said, "Yeah, sure, you're entitled to be just as loud and obstreperous as you want to, Janice, but that's not going to help you." And I was really, and he was making me madder, and it wasn't and I was trying to already process this over in the corner. And I looked at him and I said, "I'm going to tell you what I told my roommates in college. Right now, you have a choice. You can either walk out of this room right now and let me stew in this for a minute so that it leaves me, or you can yell at me and make me mad at you, in which case I will stop feeling this thing and stop letting it move through me. And then for the rest of the time I'm home this summer, it's going to come out in little nasty biting snarks over things like broken pencils." So you have a choice right now how this is going to go. And he's like, "Fine, you have to," and he grumbles his way out of the kitchen, right? And so I let the mad subside and I let it do its thing. And I started, then once my head was clear of that, and my heart was clear of that, I could start thinking, okay, so we can do it this way and I can rearrange this and I can, I started solving the problem, started solving the puzzle. So my mom and I go grocery shopping and whatever and come home, and unbeknownst to me, my dad pulls my mom aside and says, "How was she on the shopping trip? Was she still really, ugly about all this?" And da, 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 da. And my mom's like, "No, she'd already started figuring out the solution to the problem. She'd already, she's working around it. She'll make it happen." So my father calls the head of the theater and donates the money for the casters. So as long as I'm left to my own devices
Yeah.
to sort the thing, I'm okay. If it's my husband and I used to own a duplex in Minneapolis when we lived there. And I would come home from stage managing and I would be spitting nails about something. And our friend Bob lived on the first floor. And if I went upstairs at that point in our relationship, my husband would try to fix it for me and he would get mad for me. And then I'd end up having to talk him out of his tree for being mad for me when I was the one that came in mad. But if I stopped off at Bob's, he would say, "God, that sucks. You want a cup of tea?" And it was perfect because I could then just let it all go out, drink my tea, go upstairs, tell my husband about it. Everything would be fine. My husband has learned the tea trick, mind you. Let's give him credit. But so for me, it's more about being allowed to have space to outgas without anybody, getting in the way of the outgas, so that I can then compost that into something that's useful.
You're pointing out something that is important for a lot of people, and we don't identify it. And that's that when people say what's wrong or what they're feeling, that they're not asking for advice.
Right.
They're just asking to be heard, or not to be heard, but not to be advised, certainly not to be judged. But it's not just about judging. It's about advice. We don't want that advice right then. We need to sit with our feelings. I think that you've really nailed it, because more people ignore that
Yeah.
in themselves because they can't get it anywhere. And whatever they say, they get advised.
Well, and also too, it really is, there's the body component, which is actually most of my work, is
Yeah.
getting people back into their bodies and listening to their bodies. and feeling what their bodies are telling them. Because if you look at a little kid, they eat when they're hungry, they sleep when they're tired, they're mad when they're mad, their whole body's doing
Yep.
all of those things. It's not like their body's not happy and their brain is mad. I mean, everything is happening full body all the time. And then we start ignoring the signals we get from our bodies, and we don't have that smooth flow of chi, and we end up clunking rather than rolling. And
Mm-hmm.
and we eat things we don't want to, and we put ourselves in situations that make us unhappy, and we skip lunch, and we don't move when we're antsy, and we don't, and a lot of the work, most of the work I do is helping people get back into that bodily sensation, because it's still happening. We're still meeting the world full on in all layers of density. I mean, this whole body, mind, spirit thing is an artificial division. It's just different layers of density. For like, um, and with that, it's actually smarter than the words we have. When we're little kids, we have that whole body sensation of something, and then somebody teaches us the word for it. Oh, were you happy? Oh, look, you're so sad. And then we attach the word to the full body experience of it. Whereas sometimes that's not exactly the right word. And it's why people who
Agreed.
grow up in abusive or neglectful situations have weird definitions for love or safety, or because that's the word were given to attach to something.
Right.
And if we go back just to the phenomena of what's happening in our bodies, lots of times we can shift what's happening in our body, and it will change all the other levels.
Mm-hmm.
It'll move all the other levels. And it's really returning people to that full on self, or helping them remember how to respond to the world the way they did when they were 2 or 3 years old, as long as they were healthy and safe, and obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But to those instincts, that's the work that I do, regardless of how I'm doing it, which bag of tricks I'm using.
Right. We can change things so rapidly when we tune into that. One of the really quick things that I've taught performers or anybody who's going out to do something, and they feel nervous, well, that's because you care. It's not, that's really what that's coming down to. And so say that you're excited, and say it to your cat, say it to somebody, and your whole body will shift to support you more. And that's just, like I call it a quick and dirty trick. It doesn't take in the account of everything, but we often don't take account of everything when we're in the middle of got to do this now.
Well, and I don't even, I even, for people who are nervous like that, I even just bring them back to what's the sensation to your body and how do you move it. I take the word off of it entirely. Um, and
Yeah.
and just, the end of my stage management career, I was working at the Children's Theater Company, which has a 750 seat house and does the biggest magic outside of New York and LA. And they would put 7-year-olds on stage with, adult union actors.
Yeah.
And inevitably, before a preview, I would have like 3 kids whose stomach hurt. And I'd be like,
Mm.
okay, so what does it feel like? Does it feel like does it feel like rocks, or does it feel like butterflies? What is it, And then I would have them just I just have them take all that energy and just throw it through their face and their hands and fill up the entire room, all the creases between the ceilings and the walls, everything. Fill up every little nook and cranny with that stuff through their face and their hands. I said, now pull it all back in really gently and let it take a nap in your tummy. And they'd pull it all back into their stomach, and suddenly they knew everything. They'd cover for the grown-ups. They were spot on. Did not change what their stomach felt like, but changed how they lived with it, how they moved with it, how they expressed it, what they used
Right.
it for.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's, yeah, exactly. That's what I did, without having the time to communicate with people is just take
Sure.
the word nervous away.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you're working now with
Mhm.
people on the mind body integration,
Yep.
and that's what you're talking about. It's a lot of um what we also have positive intelligence, and that is what does it feel like, and what can you learn from this feeling, how can you grow from this feeling. But first of all, what do you feel like? We've separated, and there's so many different things that are doing different modalities that are working with this, because so many people have gotten to a point of dysfunction,
Right.
and we and separating out the mind, the body, and the heart, and the gut, and or ignoring the heart, ignoring the gut, going with the mind seems like it's safe, but it's really not safe when we're just suffering,
Yep.
this suffering. So how do you work with this? How do you stop the suffering, and how can people work with you?
Well, first of all, I just made up distance mind body integration to talk about what I do. I
Yeah.
really, again, am back into melting it all back together like it really has always existed. Um, and just slight point of order in the medicine that I practice, the mind actually resides in the heart. The brain is like a high paid legal assistant that
Yeah.
sometimes should not be, that really should not be driving the bus. Um, and um, the work that I do is completely based on the um, the saying that's in a lot of the ancient text, which is chi follows the mind. And so the work that I do is a specific guided meditation, somatic meditation that allows people to draw their attention through their body to the places that things are need to be released, to the places where things need to be built up, to it may be it may actually follow acupuncture meridians and how they work or specific points, but lots of times it also is just raising or lowering energy, helping people feel their bodies and realize that they have an impact on where they move that. It's sort of like it's back to the kids moving the tension out of their stomach and throwing it out and you know sparkles through their face and their hands. How do they move? How are you able, by just paying attention, by just letting your chi follow your mind's attention to the back of your head and the back of your body and the and allowing yourself to sink into it, to your to the great bowl of your pelvis and the weight that the lower part of your body has that's supporting you, and how do you pulling what you're calling anxiety and noise and tension out of your head and your shoulders and allowing it to run down through your feet and be contained in your whole body and supported by the planet and all of those things. And so it's very specific guided meditations when I work one-on-one. When I work in groups, um, my ideal sort of group uh, to work with is people who are in sort of big meeting settings or like big corporate event settings where they're going to have like presentations and then a lunch break and then tons of other presentations and then they go home or come back the next day, is to go in and bring everybody into their bodies, in their seats, in the space at the beginning. Because I don't know about you, if you've ever gone to a conference or a training or whatever, you spend the first 15, 20 minutes thinking, God, these shoes are uncomfortable. And oh, maybe I should have sat closer to my boss. And who's looking at me? And oh, I meant to bring that other thing with me and I didn't. And you kind of hear what they're talking about, but you aren't really there.
Exactly.
Whereas bringing people into their full-bodied selves into the space so they can actually ingest the information, engage in the conversation, add substantive concepts and ideas, and then at lunch or at the end of the day, bringing that to a close, allowing them to sort of release anything that was extra that they don't need to worry about, and setting it aside so that they can go actually have lunch they can, go back to their lives. And, and repeating that in the afternoon or whatever. But allowing people to be in a place where they can deeply listen, they can truly ingest, they can actually offer stuff. And that comes from being completely right there in yourself, to be able to do it. And so that's more of, with the group work, it's not, specific to this person's back pain or that person's anxiety or this person's sleep disturbance, but it's more, come here now, set the rest of it aside and come here now, for this experience.
Yeah.
So if people, oh, you did ask how. So they can go to my website, drjanicecamble.com, which also tells you other projects I'm working on. And there is a DMBI, Distance Mind Body Integration, DMBI page that's for one-on-one. There's also DMBI for groups. And then for people who like that kind of thing, there's there's some research page that shows some supporting Western research on how being that kind of present to yourself affects people in groups.
Yeah. Great. And I will put your the website will be down in the show notes, so that's going to be where people can find you.
Oh, and I can do things online as well as in person.
Right. Yeah. It's and I understand this because it's very much what I do every week for global rooms, and so that people can listen deeply and be able to communicate freely.
Yep.
So, and same thing, conferences, yeah, because there is that need. We are antsy, and a lot of us want to focus, and we don't know how.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it also allows people to own the conversation in a juicier way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than just in their heads. It's like I say to my acupuncture patients that I see in my practice, when they first start with me, I'm like, they want to read something or they want me to explain their pulses or they want me, and I said, I can tell you which acupuncture schools I recommend. I said, but what I'd really like you to do is spend, the first half of the treatment with me learning from your body. And then if you have any questions left after that, then we'll talk.
Yeah. I think one of the first questions I was trying to explain to a friend the other day about pulses, and that, yeah, it's not just the one, the Western.
Nope.
Let's see. Okay, there it is. It's 60 beats per per minute. That there's the chi of all of the different parts of us, and all flowing into this one rippling stream, there. And it's the question I think that people have the most. It's like, what are you doing? What are you feeling?
I'm listening to 6 different pulses in each arm. I'll put 3 fingers down on somebody's wrist. Yeah. And I'm listening to a superficial pulse and a deeper pulse. There's also 3 levels that I can listen to that tells me other information. And so I'm listening to 12 total. And what I'm really, for me, coming from my affinity with music, I am listening. It's like listening to a choir. And 1, I'm listening to see if the song sounds like you. 2, I'm listening to see if, are the tenors out for pizza or the altos trying to sing soprano, is everybody doing their thing? And, is the melody line, more present than the bass or the other way around or whatever. And when I say whether or not it sounds like you, if somebody comes in angry, I'm more often I'm expecting to hear some sort of tension on the pulse. If I'm if somebody comes in who has a huge personality and their pulses are really small and tiny, and then that's a disconnect in a way that we need to address, or the other way around. Somebody's super mousy, but their pulses are huge and pounding something else, that's not the same person. Um, Listening to the pulse is probably one of the most intimate ways you can meet people. One of my teachers that I studied with off and on is Jeffrey Yuen, who he lives in New York. He comes through two lineages of centuries and centuries of practitioners, and he can listen to a pulse and tell you if you've had your gallbladder out, or if you've been divorced, had a major divorce or heartbreak. I have friends who do a lot of fertility stuff. A couple of them I know have like an 80 to 85% accuracy rate in being able to tell if it's a boy or a girl, depending on what the pulse sounds like. So the thing about but even with Jeffrey or anybody, nobody ever knows everything they can know about the pulse because it's listening to life. And so
As
it's
interpreted through the person listening.
well, it's interpreted through the person listening, and there's so many ways to listen to it that you can dedicate your whole life just to developing your pulse skills. And so it seems like a little thing, but it's a huge honor to be allowed to listen to somebody's pulse, because it's sort of getting a peek behind the curtain in the way that you don't normally get.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's quite beautiful. I would love to learn how to feel that. I feel in different ways, but I don't feel, I don't know how to feel that. I have and that's okay. It's something that is a thing of awe for me. I love it. I love hearing and learning about it. So as we wrap this up and let these people go, well, your tagline says whatever's comfortable, and so I'm going to say
That's
what.
actually that's not actually my tagline. That's my pronouns.
Yes. Okay. Okay, got it. Your pronouns.
Yep.
And I was thinking, it made me think though, how would you in a nutshell
Sure.
help somebody who wants to start on the this is about the joyful path. They want to start on the joyful path. They want to get to a place of contentment or comfort or joy, and they just don't know where to start. What would you tell them?
Oh, that's just a small thing that's easily put in a nutshell.
Just a word or two, Janice.
Just do it. Just do it. Just go. Be happy. Um, ah, um, Spend some non-judgmental time with yourself
Mm.
in the same way that looking at a beautiful painting, or a sunset or a tree, or the things here in Maryland that are just starting to poke themselves up out of the ground, or a snowfall, or that type of just receptivity. Allow yourself that with yourself. Not, these are all the things that are wrong and I really hate this, and then just, and if you stumped your toe, be like, oh right, I have a toe. Or if your stomach hurts, oh yeah. Um, I'm a diagnosed asthmatic, and my more often than not, my breathing reminds me how thankful I am of oxygen. Whether I'm having an asthma attack or not, it's, oh, oxygen's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
and I used to take it for granted. Or I'm still breathing. It's hard right now, but I'm still breathing, and I'm still here, and my body's doing the work. And thank you, But spend some time being present to you. If you can get to the point of being in awe, that'd be great. But don't set that expectation for yourself. watch yourself like the beautiful part of nature that you are, and just let that be enough. Back to the conversation of enough. Let that be enough. Because it is, while it is enough, it is also absolutely everything.
Yeah. We're not judging anything that's happening. We're just observing, being and feeling. That's I love the non-judgment thing. I think that is super wise. There's a lot of stuff out there saying be grateful. And believe it or not, that is not so easy for everyone because it wasn't easy for me. I had to sit with that word for a long time. But where you're going to feel gratitude is by coming into your body.
Yep.
You don't have to call it gratitude. You don't have
Nope.
to call it that at all.
Just let it be what it is. And to paraphrase one of my teachers, Diane Connolly, um, when things when things come in, stories or judgments or a list of things to do or whatever it is, just kiss it on the head and send it on its way. And
Beautiful.
say, nope, we're just looking at this right now. We're just being. We're noticing that we get to be right now. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Dr. Janice. It has been a pleasure. And
Always.
I appreciate you.
I deeply appreciate you. I love our mutual admiration society.
Well, that was fun. That was Dr. Janice Campbell. And if you would like to find her information on the web, I put it down in the show notes, and it's to write it down. It's www.drjanicecampbell.com. Pretty easy. And you can bring her to, well, if you live in the area, you can get her as an acupuncturist, so you can also bring her to your event or have one-on-one sessions to integrate your mind and your body. So I appreciate you and thank you for being here yet another week. If you liked this episode, please hit like, and I would very much appreciate it if you would share this and ever so gently push the subscribe button as per always. And if you know somebody you'd like to see on this channel, please let me know down below or just contact me up above. In the meantime, keep moving toward the joyful path. Ciao.